Hello, hello. Oh, I'm going to get our guest off screen right quick. Hi, everyone. My name is Laurie Barento Sanchez, and I'm the Director of Operations for Busboys and Poets. Welcome back to our page, and we're really happy to see you all. My pronouns are they, them, and it is my sincere honor to introduce you all to the CEO and founder of local nonprofit Generation Hope, Nicole Lynn Lewis. Her pronouns are she, her. Nicole started Generation Hope with a big mission in mind to provide support for teen parents and their children so they can thrive in college and kindergarten, driving a two-generation solution to poverty for young families. When young families succeed, our community as a whole succeeds, and a better future is created for all. Nothing speaks more to this idea than Nicole's own story of taking her 3-month-old daughter with her to the College of William and Mary and discovering her true calling, empowering teen parents and student parents to have every opportunity to succeed. Tonight, we are joined by Generation Hope alumna Nija Simmons, she, her, and Trinity Washington University president Pat McGuire, she, her, for an honest conversation on how we as a society sometimes miss the mark in ensuring young families have the opportunities and support they need to succeed. But first, we're going to listen to Nicole read an excerpt from Pregnant Girl, a story of teen motherhood, college, and creating a better future for young families. If you're interested in purchasing a signed copy, please visit our Eventbrite page for this event. Link will be posted in our comments section for your convenience. And if you haven't had dinner yet, you can always order your favorite Busboys and Poets meal and include Pregnant Girl in your delivery. Just look under books. And now, without further ado, I'm gonna bring Nicole on.
Thank
Hi,
you
Nicole.
so much. Thank you so much, Laurie. It's such a pleasure to be here. Excited to read to you all from Pregnant Girl. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to read from the chapter All Good Things. My feet didn't belong on the 1,200-acre perfectly manicured campus. They awkwardly shuffled from building to building under the towering trees and cheap black Walmart flip-flops with patches of sunlight dancing over them. Other students casually strolled along the winding brick paths, sipping from expensive water bottles and Starbucks cups filled with iced coffee, or lounged on their backs in the luxuriant green grass of the sunken garden in the middle of Old Campus. Some families lingered for long goodbyes or to empty the last crate of towels from the trunk of their double-parked cars. Today was orientation. I crowded into William & Mary Hall, a 24,000 square foot facility that housed basketball games and other big events, along with hundreds of other freshmen, to be officially welcomed to the school and receive pertinent information for ensuring that my semester started smoothly. The school's colors, green and gold, decorated the walls and seats. A flag hung high above us that read Tribe Pride. I'd been to William & Mary Hall twice before, once when I was 14 for a big concert with Anika, my sister, and then a couple of years later for her 3-hour graduation ceremony, during which President George H.W. Bush, the commencement speaker, called the school a place of possibilities. With goodie bags full of school-branded swag at our feet, we took the honor pledge and listened to various students and President Sullivan talk about what a great 4 years it was going to be. To point out how accomplished our incoming class was, the president asked all of the students who had earned the distinction of either valedictorians and salutatorians of their high school senior class to stand. The welcome speeches echoed through the stadium while I glanced at the faces of the other freshmen around me, some eager, some completely uninterested, very few the color of mine. I hung on every word, trying to commit each piece of advice to memory, mostly because I couldn't believe I'd made it this far, and I was scared that if I missed even one thing, I wouldn't make it any farther. I knew that I was a glaring irregularity in a sea of white faces, exacerbating the feeling that my being there was a mistake.
Thank you so much, Nicole. And without further ado, I'm going to get ahead and bring on our guests. So joining us tonight is Pat McGuire, president of Trinity Washington University, as well as Generation Hope alum, Nija Simmons. Thank you all so much for joining us. Now, Nicole, that excerpt you read reminded me a lot of just me getting onto campus and how much there was behind that idea of possibility. If I could actually kind of hear from everyone um, their own journeys within academia and how they found themselves in higher education.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about my journey, and then I'm sure Nija can chime in as well in terms of her journey. And Pat, I know you have a journey to to college. Um, I got pregnant my senior year of high school, and I was an honor roll student. I was raised really with an understanding that I was going to go to college after high school. That was a given in my household, and when I discovered my pregnancy, I had this stack of acceptance letters into all these different schools, and I had this positive pregnancy test, and it was really hard to see how do those two things come together, and how can I kind of carve out a future as a young mother. And so I had a lot stacked against me, and over the next year, I experienced homelessness. I was in this really tumultuous relationship with my daughter's father. Nothing about my life said college. When I found out I was accepted to William & Mary, I was 8 months pregnant and living in a Motel 6. So I was, not your average incoming freshman at William & Mary. The journey was very difficult, many dark days, and it was hard to kind of hang on to the dream of actually just getting to campus, never mind walking across the graduation stage. So for me, it was a really tough road just to actually step foot on campus that first day.
I know for me, similar to Nicole, what she said, like I was a senior in high school. I was 17 and pregnant, and no one ever talked to me about college being an opportunity for me. So I never really saw myself actually pursuing to go to college. I never really knew what that looked like. And so I was in a abusive relationship at the time, so I couldn't even really see what my future could actually hold. And then on top of being pregnant, it was just like, it was really impossible for me to see that. And also, with disappointing my dad, and me, going through homelessness, I got kicked out of my house. So I, was in an abusive household. And I just remember getting through high school was just a struggle within itself that I knew for a fact that, I knew that I couldn't go to college at all.
Well, I am in awe of these women. And I have a generation gap here, obviously, as well as a serious culture gap, but perhaps it's instructive as well. I went to college. I came to Trinity actually in the fall of 1970. I can't believe it was 51 years ago that I set foot on this campus for the first time. And my parents didn't go to college. I was the first in our family to go to college, so I was a first generation. I came here because I had a full tuition scholarship. They could not have possibly afforded to send me to college. But back then, college cost about $2,000 tuition, room, and board. So it was very different. But I had never lived away from home. My mother didn't want me to come, but I grew up in a great big house with a lot of brothers, so I couldn't wait to get away. But one of the things pertinent to Nicole's book, and as I read the book, I just kept thinking about this. I couldn't get it out of my mind. I grew up in the old Catholic culture in the Philadelphia suburbs, where if a young lady in my high school was pregnant, she was banished. And there actually were pictures cut out of yearbooks of students who were discovered to have been pregnant, and then they would cut them out of yearbooks. And even when I was here at Trinity in the early 1970s, if a student happened to be pregnant, she would hide it by wearing a trench coat, or the seniors could wear their academic robes, and nobody knew it, or if they knew it, they didn't talk about it. So I come at this from that very dark, long ago age of having been raised in a culture where not only was it frowned upon, you were actually banished, and this from our very pro-life Catholic upbringing. So I'm eager to get into this discussion because it's so illuminating and different from my own background.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for sharing. And I was going to say, Pat, you hit it on the head, this idea of like coming from much different places. And this next question specifically for Nicole and Nija, navigating higher education as a Black student in and of itself in the United States comes with a lot of obstacles. What was it like being a Black student and a mother? Did mentioning your child in academic settings change how others perceived you?
Yes, like for me, like I really felt like I was like pushed outside of the classroom. I remember also like at my community college where we had assignments and I kind of used my situation to kind of make connections to like, the assignment we were doing. And I just remember like the feedback was just kind of like, oh, you're awfully young to be, a mother and to have a child. So I, just think, it comes with a lot of pressure in itself, being a Black woman and then being a mother on top of that. I just think it weighs down a lot on us. Because I feel like, being a Black mother is, a lot of times we're just degraded and we have to kind of work hard, to, provide.
Yeah, no, I love that, Nija. And I think, being a Black student at a predominantly white institution is something that you're acutely aware of everywhere that you go. And I remember at William and Mary, I mean, when I was there, and I think I mentioned this in the book, I think the population for Black students when I was there was about 5%. And so you never had a day where you didn't know that you were rare on that campus. You were very aware of that. And I remember classmates telling me stories, fellow Black students of other students questioning whether they were there only because of affirmative action, or had they really earned their spot in the college. My husband, who I met in college, played football, and he experienced so many really negative interactions with students and faculty and staff who made assumptions about his intelligence, and he was only there because he could play football. And so you always are aware of that, never mind adding the additional kind of layer of being a parent. And so knowing that you stick out, not only because you're a Black student, but also because you're a parent, you definitely carry that with you. You're aware of that everywhere you go. And I think because of those kind of stigmatizing things, oftentimes you don't disclose that you're parenting because you're afraid of what the retaliation might be. It could go either way. You could have a student or a professor be extremely excited and, wow, that's great and that's amazing, and really working with you to make sure that you're successful. Or you could have students and professors who are almost punitive. I remember when I would share sometimes with a fellow student, I can't come to that study group at 9 p.m. because I have a little one, and they would hold it anyway. And then my grade would suffer, and there'd be all sorts of things that would kind of, snowball after that. Or professors, I have a story in the book of a professor who, when my daughter had walking pneumonia, forced me to bring her to class because there was a test or some sort of assignment that day. And so here I was in the middle of winter with my 2-year-old daughter, carrying her through the snow with pneumonia to make sure that I made it to this class. So it adds an additional layer of isolation and kind of othering that I think is difficult as a Black parenting student, particularly at predominantly white institutions.
I definitely hear you on the othering, and that there's so much to go into that, and it's so subconscious, but very much purposeful. In your book, Nicole, you discuss lots of support systems like the Pell Grant, housing provided by your college, and food stamps for you and your daughter. Do similar supports exist today, and what's changed? And maybe Nija has a little bit more to tell us on that from today.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about my experience 20 years ago at William and Mary. There are some things that have stayed the same, and there are some things that have changed. That we still have Pell Grants, we still have food stamps, we have TANF, we have cash assistance programs. Um, what has been interesting is that the barriers to accessing those benefits are still significant. I remember how many times I would have to go up to an office and show the paperwork only to be turned around and told you don't have the right paperwork and come back Monday, and the phone calls and all of the hoops that I had to kind of go through to access various programs. Even, in my senior year, I was able to enroll my daughter in Head Start, but that was a difficult process with a waiting list and, lots of different things that could have easily derailed me from accessing those benefits. That's still the case today. It is extremely difficult for people to access supports that they need to be successful, to provide for their families, to be able to go to college. My family housing apartment at William and Mary was not a part of a larger kind of student parent friendly program at that institution. It was really intended for adjunct professors and for their families. And I advocated for myself, and I said, why can't an undergraduate student, access this? And I found that loophole. Family housing, by and large, across higher ed is pretty rare. And just like on-campus childcare that is available to students, it's less than 20% of colleges and universities across the country have on-campus childcare for their students. So there are some things that are here, that are still here 20 years later. They're still difficult to access. There's not enough. And one big thing that I hope people understand and take away from the book is that while I was able to make some of these things stretch over 12 months, like a Pell Grant, the cost of higher education has skyrocketed since I was in school. And so it's impossible for today's parenting student to live off of a Pell Grant and stretch that across 12 months. Yeah. So those are the things that I hope people take away, that there have been some things that have changed in the wrong direction in terms of making sure that higher education is more accessible for parenting college students.
I know for me, I felt embarrassed, swiping my card at the grocery store, with my food stamp card, hoping no one sees me, just knowing, that, I need a little additional help versus everyone else. It kind of just makes me feel, bad in a way that, I can't afford something just because the system makes you feel like, you just don't have it and that you're going to stay low. And so I just feel like, I feel like I get set aside from everyone else, because, I have low income, it kind of I feel like I'm placed in a category. And then, I would say also about the, childcare. I definitely feel like childcare should, be something that should be accessed at every college institution. And, financial aid should maybe consider, making that an expense, towards their funding and their costs distributed. I also feel like financial aid should also provide housing within the financial aid package to student parents, so that they can also apply to, bigger universities, so that, I feel like if they did that, then a lot of the student parents won't have to go through homelessness. And not only that they can focus on their education and be a full-time student instead of being a part-time student like I was. And it also actually took longer for me to get to my college education just by going part-time, just because I was struggling with housing and the childcare situation. So I definitely feel like, financial aid could definitely help out additionally to student parents. And also, universities being open to that, providing, housing and wanting to, make that available to student parents. So I definitely feel like those things could definitely improve in the higher education and help, students out with, providing them and, making things a little bit easier for them.
For sure. I love that you two, it's unfortunate, but you two brought up a really important part, which is poverty, and just the fact that low income students already face such a burden, and then you combine being low income and not having those like resources and support systems at the ready, which I mean most of us went through FAFSA. That alone, like it's such a huge process, and then having to like apply for childcare waivers if you're in that type of area, or like food stamps and all of that. And the amount of like they will purposely pick low income students to double check and verify, and it's just like it's a lot. It's a lot. And so I guess my next question is, which of these obstacles or challenges surprised you the most when trying to get an education? Like I know there's a lot, but what was kind of like to you the why do we do this as a society?
I can take a stab at it. I mean, I went into college knowing that it was not set up for me. And so that there was not an expectation that you know, I would be able to seamlessly kind of fit into campus, that the services would be really accessible. I went in very cautious and really knowing that it was going to be difficult. What I thought was really interesting is where some things felt like no-brainers. And I'll give you an example of that. So I moved into the family housing unit my sophomore year, and I, in order to live in that dorm, because it was a dorm with other, with undergraduate students, you had to, and you had a car, you would need a permit to park around the building. Well, obviously, I needed to park around the building. I had a kid, and I had a car seat, and I needed to transport her to daycare and all sorts of stuff. Well, as a sophomore, you couldn't get a permit to park at that dormitory. And I remember going in and talking to the parking office and being like, can you make an exception? Because I have to, I'm a parent and I have to be able to transport my child. And here you had other, graduate students and adjunct professors living in family housing, bringing their cars. And they weren't facing that kind of hurdle that I was facing because I was an undergraduate student. And so there was this hard and fast rule about being a sophomore and not being able to bring your car to this dorm parking lot. And so those were the times where I was kind of like, but I'm here, I'm talking to you about my situation, I have a child. And that was, I think, some of the most frustrating parts of college, when I would be trying to connect with a person who had the power to make my situation easier. And they were really wedded to these rules that were designed to exclude, certain students, or that they did exclude certain students. And here I was saying, but here I am, and I really need you to kind of help and work with me. And it was a painful process. So I think those were the most surprising parts, that human to human connection was not enough, and these were mothers, some of them, right, sitting behind these counters and these desks. And yet they weren't willing to kind of say, yes, this is an exception to the rule. And so that, I think, for me was probably the most surprising, that those conversations didn't always result in someone saying, I totally get it, this is an exception, and let's start to work together, to kind of make sure you have what you need.
I went to Anne Arundel Community College, and they actually have a child care center, right on campus. What surprised me the most was, there was a waiting list. Although that I was a student, I couldn't necessarily access, the child care because there was this waiting list. Not only that, I still had to pay out of pocket, for my child to go to this daycare center that's on campus. And, with me being a student struggling with childcare, it still wasn't available to me. It's like, I had access to it, but it being there didn't really matter because, I didn't have the opportunity to put my son in there, and I, didn't have the funds to. So I think, that was really surprising to me, because you would think, a college, with a childcare center, has something in place, for low income parents and, and student parents. It was kind of like a first come, first serve kind of thing. I would also say, for me, just being able to maintain unstable childcare. Being part time, just really trying to hang in there, by a string, and the childcare was just the really hardest piece. I would say was really the hardest piece, and just the fact that they were not really willing to work with me, and they only offered me part time, and I had just like a full schedule of classes, and so it just that just really wasn't helpful to me at all. The fact that it just wasn't not available.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For sure. Pat, so we're gonna come over on the other side of the table in the dean of students, or in the grand offices of universities. What has surprised you the most on your side of the desk when speaking with young parents and families?
Well, there's any number of things, and this is a very rich conversation. And by the way, I agree with everything that's been said, and we'll offer a few observations in a minute. And let me also say, by the by, just for people who are watching, Trinity today is a predominantly Black and also Hispanic serving institution. So we've changed a lot since I was a student, and for the better. And our student population, our median family income is just $25,000 a year. We're 80% Pell grantees. So we have a very large population of low-income students and students who are moms. So it's changed a lot since those dark ages that I referred to earlier. But here's the thing. So the first thing that surprised me was how much I had to learn. And one of the things I admire about Nicole and Generation Hope is it's an organization and a leader who's open to teaching those of us who need to learn what we need to know. And what I don't know, most college presidents don't think about childcare. I mean, it's just not in the toolkit of things that we're even thinking about. And one day you wake up and say, oh my gosh, there's all these strollers out on the corridor. What are we doing here? And how are we doing it? So one of the things that still shocks me, it shocked me when we tried to do it before, not very successfully, and it shocks me today. We don't offer childcare on campus, and that's a real problem, but it is so darn expensive and complicated to offer childcare in the District of Columbia, at least. And I keep asking people, I have gone to any number of people, including other childcare centers, and say, help us with this. Is there a way we can deconstruct some of the bureaucracy around childcare? Because I think childcare is a huge crisis. And I think it is, as Nija was saying, it's one of the biggest barriers, I think, for our students who, we just had graduation today. Everybody had a baby with them. So we seem to be graduating our student parents, but I know it's a barrier. So that was one thing, the cost of it. The related piece was, and I think Nija and Nicole referred to us a little bit, we're a women's institution. And so there were a lot of women here on the faculty and staff who were mothers. But there's an ingrained desire of the bureaucracy to make things the way it was when they were in the same condition. And bureaucracies reinforce the past rather than changing for the future. And trying to deconstruct bureaucracy so that students would get the support they needed about a range of things, but especially parenting, so I can't make the test today because I have to go out to Prince George's County to deal with the TANF office or the SNAP problem or the whatever, or my child is sick. And a faculty member who maybe when she was a young faculty member had a baby and couldn't take time off because the old rules wouldn't let her, would be very stern about that rather than being compassionate and understanding. Now, I'm pleased to say that today, I think most of our faculty and staff today are very, very understanding and compassionate and try to do that. But there is this, I went through it, so you have to thing that goes on, and deconstructing bureaucratic rules that don't make any sense at all is something we've had to learn to do at Trinity. I think higher ed is very rules bound. We have to do that. Also, the federal government rules so much of this with the financial aid rules. Not only FAFSA, but just the whole way financial aid is administered is an old-fashioned bureaucracy. So yeah, I mean, all of the rules that could be fixed, if the four of us on this call had our way, we could fix it tonight by the time this is over. But the bureaucracies have a life of their own, and that's part of what we have to deal with all the time.
You are not at all wrong. And you actually segued beautifully into my next question, which is, in an ideal world, what would higher education look like? Um, if you were given the means and the funds, what systems would you have in place? I'm obviously hearing childcare, and that's a whole other debate of like whose labor do we value over what type of labor. But yeah, what would be your dream university? Your vision?
I actually find this question like really amazing to me because, you know, this is kind of like my blueprint of, you know, what I actually want to do. I pretty much would like to have a institution, you know, that is strictly for student parents. So just like similar, have you have like a HBCU or a PWI, like this college is specifically, you know, for student parents. It would provide on campus housing. You know, a lot of, you know, everyone would qualify, you know, that is a student parent. Hopefully, it could be funded, you know, by the government of somehow. It would also include an elementary school on campus, so that the daycare, you know, if your child ages out, you know, there's already, you know, an elementary school that's in place. What else would I include? Playgrounds. I would definitely include like playgrounds, make it, you know, more, you know, at home kind of space. So, you know, not just, you know, white walls, dorm room, you know, kind of thing. I'll kind of, you know, make it look a little bit nicer. But mainly I would provide on-campus housing, maybe like a 2-bedroom. Not only that, but, you know, student parent a family housing. So like, you know, if you have a spouse, you know, if you maybe have, you know, 2-3 kids, you know, something of that nature, that will support all student parents.
I love that, Nija. We'll have to talk about what the name of that college or university would be.
I'll definitely let you know.
Nija University, Nija and DJ. DJ is Nija's son.
I'll open that Generation Hope.
That's right. I think this is a great question. The problem is we don't have enough time for my laundry list of things that I would, you know, try to put in place with a magic wand. I mean, obviously, we've talked about things like childcare. We've talked about I would love for training and support for faculty and staff around student parent needs. I would love for colleges and universities to connect this work to their DEI work, because student parent work is racial justice work. We know that students of color are disproportionately impacted, or disproportionately student parents. Things like Nija talked about, physical spaces that really embrace families and make sure that families feel welcome, but even things like in your collateral, you know, having pictures of parenting college students in your brochures, on your website, things like that. Do you have people in positions of power within the institution with lived experience? You know, looking at your leaders, do you have leaders of color in positions throughout your institution? So the list is long. There are many things that I would like to see in place, but one thing that I think is a great starting point for any college or university is, do you consider student parents as a liability or as an asset to your institution? And I think the reality is many college faculty and staff would answer, honestly, they would answer that they consider this population as a liability. And that's why these supports are continuing to not exist on college campuses across the country and within higher ed. And so we have to really begin to help people to understand that student parents are incredible assets to our community. I mean, Pat talked about, you know, how many of her graduates are holding babies. And, you know, I think before we hopped on, she talked about a graduate who just had a baby 2 weeks ago and is, you know, and is graduating today. They are leaders. They are wonderful examples of how do you balance so many different things. Students and other faculty and staff can learn so much from them, and they have higher GPAs on average than their non-parenting peers. So I think that's where I would like every college and university to start, is really having an honest conversation about how they view and treat and kind of respond to the student parent population.
And I want to add here, Nicole, you mentioned it in your book, and it's just so true. I mean, there's a need for wholesale change in higher ed. I'll be the first to say that. 75% or more of students in higher ed today are post-traditional. We don't call them non-traditional anymore. They're post-traditional. And when you read about college students today, and I hate the term like college kids, I refuse to use it, but people use that. The media still stereotypes students who go to college as 18, 19, 20-year-old living in a dorm and mom and dad paying the bills and they go drinking on Thursday night, and that's not reality for the vast majority of students in college today, undergrads, not including graduate student population. So this is, when you talk about intersectionality, which has different meanings, there is an intersectionality about the fact that the students who are affected are parents, they're working, they're part-time, they're commuting, they're not having that old rah-rah college experience, but they are trying to learn and earn credentials so that they can improve the lives and livelihood of their families. I will tell you, you asked me earlier, one of the things that surprised me, I read the application essays of all the students who enroll at Trinity. And what impressed me most and what I learned so much, the essays of the young mothers who wanted to come to college were stunning, are stunning, because it's the experience of having the child that frequently has driven that mother to college. I think, Nicole, you expressed that in your book in many ways. Nija, that may too. And that, for me, was an eye-opener, that rather than seeing this as a burden or a problem, it was a motivator. And it keeps the student motivated through. That is central, should be central to the collegiate tradition now, and not ancillary. And yes, we need all the other stuff. If I were to build a new residence hall here, which God knows we need to because they're all 75 years old, one of the ways, that, Nicole, and you're laughing, it would have to have student parent housing and child-friendly spaces in the new thing. Many of us, like Trinity and like many campuses, are burdened with a lot of old stuff from long ago that needs to be rehabbed, and there needs to be money in it. So this also gets to the policy sector. And I'm looking at the American Families Plan. I'm looking at all the recovery plans. There is money for HBCUs, for minority serving institutions, and for child friendly institutions in that. And I think this is an opportunity right now in this country to take advantage of all the funding that's flowing through the new programs to get higher ed refocused on doing the kind of spaces, places, and policies that we need to support the new populations, including the student parents. Well, I'll get off my soapbox now. That's my little speech.
And Laurie, I have the honor and privilege of serving on Pat's board at Trinity Washington University. And this is why I like to soak up all of this magic that Pat puts out. But it's a very special institution with an incredible leader, and we need more like Pat.
Thank you.
For sure. I just love everything you all said. It really just encompasses everything. And I love that Pat was like, listen, like policy-wise, there's money.
Yes.
There is money out there. Like, we know there's money. I remember back in undergrad when I had to ask for stuff as a low-income student, I was like, I know y'all have the money. I know y'all have it. And so real quick, I don't want to like discourage folks from academia. And I do want to kind of discuss a little bit about who were some of the people who really fought for you guys and were in your corner all the way through your higher education experience. And this is kind of more centered at Nicole and Nija.
She's sitting right in front of me.
Oh, Nija.
People, like Nicole, people that, pushes student parents and get people to, see it from a different perspective and, to let them know why, student parents are important. I think, that's just, it's like a treasure, someone, has been in my shoes and able to basically, have someone stand up for me and kind of have my back and knows that, that I matter. So I really feel like, she's been a person that's definitely been in my corner, even though I'm not physically in the program anymore, just by sitting here, talking to her, just being a part of, the events and, just, having that experience, with her really, pushes me to be who I want to be. And, watching what Nicole has done, knowing that, if she can do it, that I can do it. And, everything that Generation Hope provided for me, like my mentor, Nija Patterson, me and her, we still have a relationship. We're still able to, contact each other and work with each other. But I really think, I definitely have to give it to Generation Hope. I would have actually never knew that this is possible without the mission of Generation Hope. So I just really think that, Nicole is phenomenal, and, Generation Hope is really phenomenal. And I really appreciate Nicole, and I definitely appreciate, what her program has done for me.
It's very sweet, Nija. And you guys, I'm honored to be a part of your journey, Nija, and so proud of you and where you are today. And I can't wait for all of the amazing things you're going to do, including founding a student parent college is what I'm hearing in the future. But adore you and adore DJ. And I mean, I think for me, I didn't have a Generation Hope in college. And so that's one of the reasons that I wanted to start this organization. And one thing that I did know is that there were champions along the way for me that really did help to make a difference. So in high school, I had, this high school principal who was able to kind of see my potential beyond the pregnancy, who was really committed to making sure that I graduated. We know that less than 50% of teen moms graduate from high school and less than 2% graduate from college. So it was a big deal for me to have him in my corner. I had a teacher who was like a second mom to me and was really an emotional support more than anything, and a guidance counselor that really went to bat for me to at least make sure I graduated from high school. And then when I was in college, I had less kind of champions. Again, it was just a different environment, and it was harder to get to know, the faculty and staff in that way. But I did have a financial aid counselor who really fought, to make sure that I had a financial aid package that my daughter and I could survive off of. And she was, I mean, I don't know what I would have done without her and making sure that I was accessing all the funds that I could access. So I learned from that experience how critical people are to making sure that students are successful. I think we live in this time where technology is supposed to solve everything. And certainly there are things that technology does solve for, but relationships and champions and social capital are huge, and they cannot be replaced. And for many students, I mean, Pat talked about how many students are in higher ed today that don't have strong networks. They don't have, a ton of social capital. They don't have champions. And so we have to figure out how to create those networks for these students. And I really wanted to make sure that Generation Hope had that as a core component of what we do.
Awesome. And it sounds like it's working. It really does. And then, Nija, we kind of already hit on what I was going to ask next, which was what the difference Generation Hope made for you and your son. Did you have anything else you kind of wanted to discuss to highlight the program? Or we could even just keep talking about Nicole and how awesome she is.
Please, no. I don't want to lose anybody who's watching.
I think Generation Hope, it created a vision for me. It created a vision that I never would have thought that I would imagine that could actually ever happen. It provided family support. It provided, my son to be able to connect and, play with other children. It made me feel like my education mattered. And that my mental health was important as well. Generation Hope provides counseling and, to the scholars, and I definitely took advantage of that. So I feel like, Generation Hope created an environment that met all my needs, not just one thing, but, all of my needs. It also met, support for my son. Him being able to be a part of, the workshops, the classes, fun activities for the children. So I really feel like Generation Hope painted this picture that I could have never thought could ever come true.
Perfect. And all right, so we're going towards the end. So if anybody in the audience has any questions, now is the time to put them in our comments on Facebook or YouTube. But Nicole, your own experiences certainly seem to have informed Generation Hope. Can you share more about your new Family U cohort?
Yes, I can. So I think it's actually a great segue from a lot of the things that we're talking about tonight in terms of what needs to change across higher ed to better support parenting students. We've been doing direct work with students over the past 10 plus years, and it has really given us an opportunity to get a sense of the landscape of higher ed. We support parenting college students at 20 different 2- and 4-year schools across the DC metro region. And what has been really obvious in our work as we've been helping our students navigate the bureaucracies that Pat mentioned is that, the field is just not equipped really to support this population. And there are basic things like just knowing how many parenting students are on their campus and understanding the needs and the experiences of student parents that are just not happening. And we felt like, we are in a position, we have been doing this work with our students. We're seeing graduation rates that are higher than the national average for college students, whether they're parenting or not. It's 8 times the rate of single mothers nationwide. So we're seeing that this holistic support and all the benefits and the things that Nija is describing really does help to move the needle for this population and making sure they make it to the graduation stage. So our Family U program is a technical assistance program where we partner with colleges and universities across the country. Our first cohort will be here in the Mid-Atlantic region and really focused on our area. And we're going to be working with 5 institutions over a 2-year period. And it'll involve kind of a learning community where the institutions are learning from each other. We'll be helping them to understand some core components of successful student-parent work. And then we'll also be supporting them in the implementation of their student-parent supports on their campuses. We'll be doing some one-on-one coaching. And really, the idea is that we want to help them do the incredible work that they do every day, and just to do it with a student-parent lens, which quite frankly doesn't just benefit student parents, it benefits all students. If we can create, these environments that are embracing and supportive of students who have caregiving responsibilities, it does overlap and really connect with all of these other populations and just creates a campus that's more empathetic, that's more understanding, that's more accommodating, no matter what your journey is as a student. So we're really excited about it. We'll be announcing institutions that are participating next month. And we're excited about this new arm of our work that's really about not just supporting the students directly, but how do we make systemic changes that will have a broader impact on parenting college students across the country.
That sounds so cool. I love to hear it. Could you let us know what institutions you're partnering with, or is that still under wraps?
We just closed our application process.
Got ya.
So we're really excited. We're reviewing applications now, but we'll make a big announcement next month. So if people want to follow along with our cohort and find out which institutions are participating, please follow us on social media. I know that we have the information scrolling below, but we're going to make a big announcement next month, and we're really excited. We're so excited about our applicants, and we're excited to select our 5 institutions.
That's awesome. And
Laurie, if I could just put a comment in here, as I've listened to Nicole and read her book, it's really important to point out what great leadership she brings to this nationwide initiative, and has been recognized, a CNN hero, many different prizes and awards. But here's the thing, Nicole started with an idea about helping student parents. And we are so blessed that some of our own Trinity students are Generation Hope scholars, and we're grateful for that. But then she branched out from that to realizing that she needed to educate the children also. So she also has the children involved in programming through Generation Hope. And now she's realizing she has to educate the institutions. So as I've watched this stair-step growth, it is a classic business model. William and Mary should be very proud that their education took hold with Nicole. but it's a great story in how a great leader doesn't just keep doing one thing, but keeps inventing the model to make it bigger and broader and to take it from being local to being national. I admire it very much, and I'm just one college president, but I believe that this book, Pregnant Girl, should be read by all college presidents. And I'm going to recommend it to my colleagues. I also, Nicole, I don't know how you feel about that, but I think all the bishops and pastors should get it also.
I'm 100% with you.
Because it actually reveals a commitment to children and families through a lens that they never think about, but it's the right lens, and it really helps to recenter and refocus the whole conversation about children and pregnancy and all of that, and I just love it. So I've got big ideas for you after this.
I'm ready, and thank you, Pat. I truly appreciate those kind words, and again, so excited to be involved with all the great things that are happening at Trinity and working with you. And Nija, people should also know Nija is in Pregnant Girl. Her story, okay. If you'd like to learn more about Nija's experiences, Nija is featured in the book, and would love to have you read all about her wonderful accomplishments.
By the way, my school actually purchased a lot of the books.
Okay. Great. I think I saw some message about that today. That's awesome. And you should tell people where you are, because I don't know that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm at Wilson College here in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. I'm a part of the SPS program, Single Parent Scholar Program. And my coordinator, Miss Katie Coe, she actually purchased a lot of the books here. Okay. A lot of the books. Yeah.
Well, please tell her thank you.
If any other universities or institutions out there are listening and wondering, how do I order in bulk? You can always email us at books@busboysandpoets.com, and would be more than happy to do that, because I think everyone should read it, in all honesty, but most especially those in higher education.
Yes.
And I just want to touch real quick on, I love the fact that you all take a two-pronged approach, and Pat said it perfectly. Not only are you helping the students, the parent students themselves, but you're also enriching and just really giving the children as much of a loving and kind experience as possible, while their parents are, trying to figure things out and making a future for themselves that, can be secure and safe. Everybody just kind of wants to feel that way at the end of the day. Like you said, the field isn't equipped to support these families and their needs, and it's just so incredible that you all have started this fight on everyone's behalf. And I say everyone because even if you don't intrinsically know somebody who was pregnant as a teenager, the steps and strides you're making, we've said this again and again, the intersections of poverty and race and parental status in this case, they're not just oopsies, they're not mistakes, they're very much there for a reason. And so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you all have any last things, last minute announcements?
I would just say, if you're in the DC region, we are recruiting mentors, and we would love to have you as a mentor at Generation Hope. So, and we have, our requirement for mentoring is that you have a big heart, that you care about our mission, you care about families and children and education, and you want to see young parents be successful. So oftentimes we'll have people say, well, I'm not a parent myself, so I probably wouldn't be able. We have people who have no children, some people who have been teen parents themselves, doctors, stay-at-home moms, all sorts of different professions. It really doesn't matter. We're looking for people who have a big heart and who really want to work with us to make the world a better place. So you can go to our website, generationhope.org, and learn more.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And with that, I think we're gonna start wrapping up for the evening. Thank you so much again to all of our guests for joining us tonight and sharing their experiences and thoughts with us. It's been a lovely evening with you all, and I feel a little lighter knowing that folks like you are out there working to make our communities safer, happier, and just a lot more empowered. If you want to keep up with Nicole and Generation Hope, please go ahead and follow her at Nicole Lynn Lewis on Twitter. And you can also do @SupportGenHope for more updates on Generation Hope. In the comments, you'll find special links to Generation Hope's website and different ways that you can get involved with young families in the DMV, whether it's through becoming a mentor, Or simply, donating a couple bucks here and there. Maybe do a monthly contribution to Generation Hope.
Yes.
I will toot the horn for you. Do
Thank
not
you,
worry.
Laurie.
There you go.
Just because,
Yes.
mutual aid has become a very, very huge word these days, and it's, it's time. I feel like we're reaching a point where we're all ready for a brighter and better future, and you're
Yes.
starting it. So I have went ahead and put those comments out there for everyone. And all right, we're going to say goodbye to our guests now. Thank you all so much.
Thank you,
Have a good
Laurie.
rest of
Thank you
your
for having me.
evening.
It was nice to meet you, Nija.
Nice to meet
I'll be
you.
seeing you, Nicole. Keep up the
Thank
great
you.
work.
Yes, you too.
Ooh. All right. So, a special thank you all, of course, to everyone at home who joined us tonight. We appreciate your support and hope you'll keep an eye out on future events on busboysandpoets.com/events. You can keep up with us at Busboys and Poets on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. If you're far from the DMV, you can always support us through our bookshop storefront, bookshop.org/busboysbooks. And you can receive Busboys merch on our Shopify page. We ship anywhere in the United States. And on that note, have a good night, everyone, and stay safe and well.